Welcome to Retrospective Cinema, a podcast wherein we'll endeavor week after week to see the full filmographies of chosen directors. We'll interpret, critique, and discuss. I'm your co-host, Ryan Saylor.
And I am your other co-host, Annie Morell. And this week, we will be continuing our journey into the films of Satoshi Kon with Tokyo Godfathers. Here's a clip.
おーい、よちよち、すぐにあったかいうちに出てきまちからね。
警察はあっちだぞ、おい。
この子は神様がくださったクリスマスプレゼント。私たちの子供よ。
That was once again from Tokyo Godfathers. We are completionists here, so normally we would be looking at any supplementary material in between our last film, Millennium Actress, and this one, but there isn't any, so we get to jump right in, which I'm pretty excited for. Throwing it back to Christmas time a bit with this one. Yeah, you had not seen this one before?
No, I have seen this. This is the last thing by him that I have seen. So after this, I'm flying blind, but I have a particular friend that's a big Satoshi Kon fan, and we had watched this during Christmas probably 3 years ago now, something like that. But this is the first time I'd seen it since then. So second watch, and yeah, it's still great.
Yeah, I truly had no idea what to expect with this one. I did not look up, any sort of plot summary, and what a wild ride. But, one of those, I think for me, it kind of goes into the category of, like, it's a great film and also it's a great, like, Christmas story, because it is very much a Christmas movie. It's not like a Die Hard situation where it just happens to be set during Christmas. I think Christmas magic is a big factor here, which I appreciated, but not, not your usual tale at Christmas, perhaps. Yeah, where do you want to start?
Well, I don't want to cut you off, but do you not think Die Hard is a Christmas movie? Are you one of those?
I feel like I did not say that just now. I said I think it's more like I think the intention of Die Hard was not to be a Christmas movie, and I think that there is clear evidence to that point, mainly that it came out in the summer when it was originally released. I'm not saying I don't really care. Like, great, I love Christmas. Let's have more Christmas movies. Let's get more people into the festive mood however we can. If you're an action movie fan, I think that's a great entry point into feeling more festive. But I did not know you had a strong opinion about this. You want to give that?
Yeah, absolutely. What I've always said is that a Christmas movie is not just a movie that takes place at Christmas. It's a movie that has some theme about family or coming together or forgiveness. I think those are the main themes of Christmas films, which makes Die Hard a Christmas movie because it's a film with themes of both forgiveness and family and coming together. So there you go.
Okay. Cool. Is it? Man, I need to rewatch Die Hard.
It's all about a man that is, fighting to get back with his estranged family after failing as a father, and her forgiving him.
Okay. Okay. And it also is set during. So you're saying that both things have to be true. Like, one of those themes has to be explored, and it has to be set during Christmas. Okay,
that's what qualifies for me.
Great. I don't object to that. I think, again, I just don't really care that much. I think to each their own is my opinion. But I that's the most salient argument I've heard in favor of Die Hard being a Christmas movie. So
worth mentioning at this point as we head toward the actual film that, yeah, we are a full spoiler podcast. So if you're not into that or you haven't seen the film, maybe click away and watch it. It's only 90 minutes. It's on the Criterion channel, who still hasn't sponsored us.
It's on Criterion? I watched it on Tubi, and it was an awful experience.
Tubi? With the commercials?
With the commercials. it was both awful, and I felt like I was watching, a Christmas special on TV in the olden days before we could.
Well, that has its charm, I guess.
Yeah, but I did not even check, and I wasn't at home where Criterion was readily available for me when I watched it. So, and wow, now we'll get there, but I think perhaps you had a different subtitle experience than me as a result, and thank goodness for that.
I didn't. I know exactly what you're talking about, but we'll talk about that as much as we can, safely and respectfully. But anyway, if you are into spoilers, you're down to hear them, whatever. We'll be talking about Tokyo Godfathers, which yes is absolutely a Christmas movie. By the end of this, I think God himself shows up to save our characters, and particularly the Christian God, based on the way this film goes. So that was what stood out to me most, I think, the first time, because Japan, mostly very atheist country. It is actually, this is a fact, or at least it was, a couple years ago when this came up in some conversation. Japan is the most, so of countries where it's legal to be Christian, because there are places where it's illegal, but of the places where it's legal to be Christian and legal to talk about it, it is the place with the least Christians.
Huh. I don't know that.
Yeah. So very interesting when I, watched this movie a couple years ago, saying like, what is this? In looking it up now, I couldn't find much one way or the other. It very well could be just that it was Christmas as a holiday is massive in Japan. So it could just be that, they were tapping into that, or that it was a, creation myth that they thought would be interesting. I know Satoshi Kon was inspired partially by the film Three Godfathers. I think it's a John Ford, which obviously this is inherently pretty different than a Western, but maybe it's in that text. I haven't seen it. So there's any number of things here, but I did think it was interesting that this, is a Christmas film in that way. How'd you interact with this as a Christmas film, and did that in particular stand out, or what'd you feel?
We've talked before about how I'm not a religious person. I am agnostic, I would say, and so I think maybe the specifically like Christian elements didn't stand out quite as much to me, though I do understand and totally see what you're saying. And obviously, like there's a sort of immaculate conception of sorts that happens, and there's lots of things.
Yeah, a baby's saving them. There are three wise people.
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
Three wise people. Yeah, and there are miracles that happen. There's snow. There's lots of kind of Christmas. But I wrote down at one point, so much Christmas magic. There's a lot of things that I think if it wasn't set during Christmas time, I would probably call it out for, like, wow, this is such a coincidence, or this is quite lucky that this happens to this or that character. But because it's Christmas magic, I personally love Christmas magic and absolutely will believe it in this context and most any context, to be honest. So yeah, I think that's how I interacted with that piece of it, with the holiday piece of it. But maybe worth starting with just talking about like our four main characters, I guess. Count the baby.
Count the baby.
And we should count the baby, right? So we have Miyuki, who is a young teen runaway girl. We have Jin, who is kind of a middle-aged. They're all homeless, also. worth saying, absolutely, and definitely figures very prominently in the plot and messaging. But we have Jin, middle-aged man, and then we have Hana, who I think, in the year 2026 now, we can say she's a trans woman. In 2003, especially in Japan, definitely was not considered to be a trans woman, but I did quite a bit of reading about her character, and in that reading, she uses the Japanese she pronouns, no matter what subtitling did to all of that. And in, I think, the newer subtitling of this by G-Kids, she is referred to by Miyuki as Ant Bag or Bag Lady. And in the new dub, she's voiced by a trans woman, a trans actress named Shakina Nafak. So all worth saying, and I'm sure we'll get into the kind of problematic bits of her portrayal. But yeah, we have these three homeless people who are this makeshift family, kind of a mother, father, and child dynamic, I would say. And they find a baby who they name Kyoko, or specifically Hana names Kyoko, which Kyo means pure, as she says. And that's where we begin. So
yeah, we can. I mean, I think it's good to just dive into Hana's character now. I think most people have embraced the portrayal overall. I think a lot of the audience of this film is pretty progressive. Satoshi Kon's fan base has seemed to lean that way over the years, but this definitely could be read a different way. But I think the film does a good job of not punching down. There definitely are some problematic elements. Some of it though is lost a little in translation, and it's hard to tell how much nuance there is or isn't. So there is a slur used against her a number of times in the film, and in the English translation it is translated as the F slur, but that's not quite right. But the slur in Japanese is more about like cross-dressing. Hey, well, I can hand it over to you because you did some research, but I think it seemed like it wasn't the most fair translation, but also I'm not sure what else you would have translated. So anyway, what'd you find as you looked this up?
Yeah, so I think you're right. I should say we're both cis people. Very much not trying to speak for the trans community in any way, but in my research and reading some trans folks' writings on this character, I do think overall she's beloved. I think she is honestly a pretty progressive portrayal of a trans woman for the time, for 2003 and for Japan as well, again from my reading. But yeah, what you're talking about, I think the translating that Japanese slur into the F slur, not great. I think, some of the subtitling, not great, choosing to use a lot of he, him pronouns for her in the original subtitling of this. She's a woman who once worked at what is called in Japan, or was called at the time in Japan, an okama bar, which is essentially like a drag bar. It's a bar where, ostensibly men are dressing up as women for folks' entertainment, and doing what very much happens in drag bars in the US, singing songs and entertaining folks. And I think there's a lot of care taken in a lot of ways, especially again for the time with Hana. And then I also think that there are a lot of times where her identity is played for comedy. Even her storyline, I think, is a little less complex, I want to say, than Jin and Miyuki, because Jin has this, really sad, complex backstory, which I'm sure we'll get into, that kind of develops over the course of the film, and same with Miyuki. But Hana's is just kind of like, we don't know why she's on the street, and it's the same with all characters. We don't know initially why they are homeless, what happened in their lives, and then we eventually find that out through the course of the film. But for Hana, it's really just this one flashback to the drag bar where she is performing, and then she kind of gets into an altercation with a customer, and then she just flees. She thinks like, oh well, I messed up, I don't have a job anymore, and then she becomes homeless as a result. I think that was my personal main issue with the portrayal of her character, because if you're going to give the other two protagonists such a kind of complex, rich backstory, and then it's just like, oh, she got into a fight, and like, not to say that isn't believable, but it just feels weird by comparison for me. And then at the same time, it's again like very progressive, and I think from what I've read, a really genuine portrayal of what a lot of trans folks often deal with, which is like homelessness is a reality often for some trans folks. I think there's a lot of discrimination that's portrayed toward her in the film that obviously is real and still happens to this day for trans folks. And so I think it's a mixed bag overall, but I do think everything in its time, and like for the time, it seems to be very progressive, is the kind of consensus overall. So that's my research on that.
No, I think that's fair. And I think even if it's not like, perfect, like it's doing a lot more at least than even most mainstream films try. Like at least it stars a trans woman and like puts her in a positive light, and the characters around her love her and questioned her in respectful ways. I think there's the scene where Miyuki is trying to feel out like why Hana is sad and says like, oh, do you love him? Like things that, would inherently draw attention to like her being trans are accepted. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's overall good. And I think there's a reason it has resonated with a lot of people.
I would just add an asterisk to that, which is, I think it's fairly clear that both Miyuki and Jin do consider her to be just like a cross-dressing man and a cross-dressing gay man, which, was kind of the perception of a lot of trans people to a lot of people at the time and prior. So yeah, that's the asterisk that I will throw in there. But I agree. It's like, it's still respectful and loving the way that Jin and Miyuki interact with her, I would say, for the most part.
Maybe I, was viewing it with too modern a lens, but yeah, I'd have to go back. I mean, I know Jin refers to her in that way a lot, but he's also kind of just brash and irresponsible with his words like all the time. So yeah. I don't know. I didn't read it as him.
Yeah, but I think they're just like, unaware of like that is a type of identity that can exist. Was my read on it. It's just like not within their vocabulary. So that's how both of them are seeing her.
Okay, fair enough. I think the film does acknowledge that she has less to do, but I don't know that makes it excusable necessarily. But we get an interlude where the entire style of the film shifts briefly, where she refers to this like story of a red devil and a blue devil, and she essentially the story goes that this character, the blue devil, is there to like bring other people together but isn't going to like find peace on their own. And that is what she does in the film, ultimately. Like Miyuki and Jin both find their families by the end of this, and Hana doesn't. So, I'm not saying that excuses that she has less to do, but it is intentional at least, or it's at least acknowledged in the text, which I thought was interesting.
I will say on that, I agree that she does not find her family, but I do think we get a hint of that she does at least have a chosen family at the drag bar. And, we get a lovely little glimpse at her relationship with the bar's mother, the drag mother who runs the place, and that she's immediately to Hana, she immediately is like, why did you leave? Like, where did you go? It's fine that happened. She's immediately, opening up her arms to her again as soon as she comes back to the bar. And it's a lot. It's clear that her exile was a lot more of an internal
self-imposed
battle. Yeah, self-imposed. Yeah, exactly. The only other kind of glimpse of who Hana's family used to be that we get is she references, since Ken died, I think, when talking to her drag mother. And of course, that's also kind of played as a joke. She says, since Ken died, and I think it's the drag mom who says like AIDS, and then she goes, he slipped on the soap, which I did think was kind of funny, but also is maybe questionable. One of those questionable jokes. Yeah. But yeah, she had a partner who loved her, and we get kind of images of the two of them happy and together at one point. So it's kind of clear that for her, she's never going to be able to return to that because her love is dead. So yeah, tragic.
Breaking down the other stories while we're on the characters. Miyuki fights with her family and eventually stabs her father and runs from there, but also self-imposed in a way, because we see that her dad, has forgiven her and wants her back. Like the whole movie, they actually run into him once or twice prior to the end of the film, and each time he's fighting to get to her, but unsuccessfully.
Yeah, he has the ad in the paper where he's asking her to come home, and she calls him at one point, and he pretty much knows that it's her on the phone, and she doesn't say anything and gets freaked out and hangs up. And yeah, and he's the police chief or a police detective? ?
Something.
He's in the police. I did have a question I was wondering if you have an idea of how long she's been gone, because I think we get a couple of clues that led me to believe that it had been a significant amount of time, like maybe.
I think it says 6 months. I think they say that.
Okay. I thought it was longer, mainly, well, one, her relationship with Jin and Hana is pretty deep, so you assume she hasn't just, been gone for a couple days. But also, when they do flash back to her, or when they tell her backstory of what happened, why she left home, she, I think, is drawn significantly younger. She's kind of like a little bit chubbier.
Yeah, she's drawn definitely bigger. I think she's lost significant weight, and she actually compensates for that with the clothes she wears, which is interesting.
Yeah. I'm as I said that, I realized, like, oh yeah, it's because she's homeless and lost a bunch of weight because she's not eating as much. That makes sense. But in my initial watch, I took that to mean, oh, she's gotten a little bit older and maybe lost some of her baby fat, as kids are wont to do. But that makes more sense. And if they said 6 months, then it's gotta be 6 months.
And then, you want to talk about Jin?
Yeah, so Jin is, well, we think we get the story of Jin at the start. He kind of paints himself in a much better light than is his actual reality. But at first he says that he was like a race car driver and he was hurting for money because his daughter was sick. And so he conspires with this guy who places a large bet for him to lose the race, and he throws the race intentionally so that he can get this payout from this guy. And then he says that his wife and daughter are dead. Both died after all of that, and that's why he is where he is now. And we slowly get like more and more reveals of the truth of that, and the fact that a lot of that is a lie. He was not a race car driver. He owned a store. He basically like spent all the money gambling and on alcohol. He's clearly got a gambling and alcohol addiction, which is very, very common in the Japanese homeless population, which I would love to talk about that. Maybe we can do that now, or do you think we should come back to it?
Yeah, go for it. I don't know where you're going, but yeah.
My other research that I did was, because I was, as I do after the fact, was lurking around on Letterboxd, and someone had linked in their review of this to a like very short documentary about why homelessness in Japan is so different from homelessness in the United States. And there are a few factors, of course. One of those is there are not really like mentally ill people out on the street in Japan because they have a really strict institutional policy. Like they'll just institutionalize the mentally ill. They don't have, the US has laws against forced institutionalization. Japan does not. They also have incredibly strict drug laws, so it's pretty hard to get your hands on any illegal drugs unless you literally know a member of the Yakuza. And, gambling is a huge issue, and gambling addiction is a huge issue there, and alcohol addiction, partially because of the strict drug laws, is kind of the main substance addiction that's common there. So that, I think, really informs why we see like these particular characters. I don't know. I think American audiences might have the presumption that like, oh, like are they mentally ill, because that is often what is the case for a lot of homeless folks here. And the other thing that I found really interesting about this little documentary was the homeless are like a lot less visible in Japan.
Yeah.
Because they are, and I think we see that in like their little home that they've constructed is like very much like off the beaten path, not in a major thoroughfare. And again, that's partially like a law thing, and it's partially a cultural thing, because pride is so ingrained, pride and shame are so ingrained in Japanese culture, and maybe you can speak more to this since you have actually been to Japan, that a lot of homeless folks there are wanting to be more out of the way. They don't want their homelessness to be on display.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, yeah, when I was there, I don't know if this has come up on here or not. but I actually had the opportunity in college to go to Japan for 5 weeks, which is, longer than a vacation, shorter than living there. But 5 weeks is a decent amount of time. It's enough that you get into like a routine and you kind of get past the initial honeymoon stuff of any place. 3 weeks into being in Japan, I saw my first homeless person, and it was very interesting because we'd been in Shinjuku out later than intended, and I just kind of realized like, oh, this person was waiting until it turned like a certain time to like set up here, which in America, and not saying, I mean, obviously all homelessness is failure of society. I'm not saying one is good or bad, but you'll see people any time of day. So it was just kind of a very interesting cultural moment for me to see like, okay, like this person, has chosen to wait until a certain time of night to find their spot to sleep. Like that, I think that really summarized some stuff for me, both good and bad. That was just very interesting as I kind of, was exploring the culture more. But yeah, when you were talking about them being less seen, I was like, yeah, I can attest to that.
Yeah. Well, and for the same, sort of cultural reasons, they don't usually panhandle. They don't usually ask people for money. So there's not this, you go to pretty much any major city in America and yeah, you're going to have a homeless person ask you for money. And that just doesn't happen in Japan, again, for all the reasons we just talked about. So bringing it back to Jin, I watched this and I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly Jin's situation where he has these addictions and it has led him to a life of homelessness. Anyway, as we continue to see his lies sort of melt away throughout, we learn that he kind of just abandoned his family. Like it was not them through as a result of his shame. He just kind of left and chose, I think all three, now I'm realizing, wow, all three of them did kind of look at their situation and go like, this is my only choice. I have to leave. Not saying that, I think there's truth to that in each case. Like, I do think that they believed that they had no other choice. Ooh, great movie. different movie.
Yeah, very different movie.
We find out that actually, they were both looking for him for a good while. His daughter, who is also named Kyoko, just the same as the baby. And we can talk about the many, many coincidences throughout this film in a moment, maybe. Yeah, she wanted to know her father, ultimately. And it was really his pride and his shame that led him to leave because he wasn't the man that he thought he should be. His sort of personal crusade at this point is to try to save up a little bit of money to give his daughter, who at this point is an adult. Like he has been out on the street for so long that she is a full adult, which we find out at the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are our three main characters, and then they find a baby in the snow.
There you go.
What I do love about Hana's character is at one point she says, and I'm going to quote what the subtitle said. I'm sure it's probably phrased a little better in the original Japanese and maybe in the new subtitling as well. She says, what if a homo could get pregnant and then they find a baby?
Yes.
Which I love that.
Yeah, well, it's even acknowledged by someone else. She says like, he was with child.
He was eating for two. Yeah. Because she's in like a bread line.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
She tries to get extra food. There are a lot of jokes just in general around Hana, and I think some of them are mean-spirited and at her expense, and some of them are just kind of actually just funny.
Yeah. Well,
and not at her expense, which I appreciate.
I think a lot of them are at least at the expense of Japanese perception or like cultural perception of her. So it kind of takes her out of the bullseye, which I think is why a lot of them do work.
Yeah. And I think that's why the character, for the most part, feels really progressive for the time, because it does ultimately feel like, well, yeah, like at this time, a trans woman probably would be treated this way. Like this is just reality, sadly. Sure. Do you want to talk about the many coincidences and repetitive imagery?
Yes. So a big thing in this movie is coincidence versus fate. And yeah, I mean, there's any number of them. There are the different people with the same names. There's characters running into each other left and right. And we've talked about that in passing for both cases. Yeah, the whole time, Hana seems to be the one that kind of actually sees a little bit of what's going on. The major incident prior to the ending is they're at a conveni and they get asked to leave because they smell bad. And Jin escalates it. And so the store owner and our heroes and then just a person in the store all end up outside. And this ambulance comes barreling through the building and like would have killed them all. But Hana's like, oh no, this baby truly was blessed, like we're safe. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like it's an insane moment, but it also is just there. But yeah, so that happens. I mean, at one point they're describing the potential suicide of the woman that's like right behind them, and then they see that. Anyway, so there's all kinds of things where they both speak things into existence and avoid major conflict or death because of either coincidence or fate, I think the film would argue.
Yeah. And then there are the tiny little things that I enjoyed, like 12/25, the date of Christmas, is just everywhere in this. Like anytime there is a number, it is gonna be 12/25. The cab number, the radio, everything. The calendar, or the note written on the calendar at one point says 12/25.
Oh, that's like the new address you're saying?
Yeah, the new address that's written on that calendar.
Oh yeah, I missed that one. That's cool.
So of course, once I started clocking that, I was like writing each one of them down, being like, there it is. Angels, very repetitive angel imagery, angel tower. There's a dog named Angel, I believe. There's an actual angel who, when Jin gets, potentially mortally wounded and is kind of dying in this alleyway, an angel appears to him. And I loved this moment. She says, "My magic or an ambulance?" And he goes, "An ambulance." And she's pissed off because he chooses the ambulance. So, and then of course, Kyoko, the name Kyoko, which is both the name that Hana gives the baby and Jin's daughter's name. And one of the boys that beats up Jin says, "Kyo's coming," which is not Kyoko, but it's the first part of it, the pure part of it. So yeah, I don't know. Again, like that would not work in a movie that was not a Christmas movie, but it so works. All these little things.
Yeah, or at least a movie that like acknowledges it. Like, I mean, like Magnolia does that and it works because it has its whole preface about coincidence, but it's acceptable without any kind of larger talking about it here just because it's Christmas.
and as you were saying, I do think Hana kind of acknowledges it a bit here and there. So both those things I think help to pull that off.
This culminates in the big finale of the movie. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh my god. I don't know, like maybe I've just been really emotional lately, but
oh no, it's powerful.
That specific, I mean, one of the most beautiful shots of all time in a film. So I'll get to that. We think, or our characters, a couple of our characters think like, oh, we found the mom. They find the woman who's attempting to commit suicide off this bridge, and they realize like, oh, this is her baby, or she says, that's my baby. I lost her, and that's why I'm committing suicide. I'm trying to be with her. And Hana and Miyuki give her the baby, and they're like, awesome, like, job well done, guys. And then they meet up with Jin, and Jin is like, no, you messed up. That lady stole that baby, and now we need to go track her down and get the baby back. And so that culminates in a chase up to a very high rooftop, and Miyuki trying to negotiate this woman down from a ledge, both to save her life and the baby's, because she is still holding the baby. And then Jin and Hana catch up to her, and the three of them end up dangling off this building. Then, gosh, I'm the specifics of this coordination of this choreography are escaping me, but essentially Hana ends up having the baby in her arms, and she fully falls off this building. And I think because this is adult animation, because even though there's a lot of comedy, there's a lot of realism and a lot of really serious topics explored throughout this whole film. When she fell off that building, it wasn't, in my mind, a guarantee that she was going to survive with that baby.
Well, there's just no way out. Like there's we already, like, her friends are already accounted for. Like there's no character missing. There's nothing subconsciously in your mind like, oh, this person can come in and like save the day.
There's no branch that she can grab at the last second. It sometimes happens.
Yeah, no, it seems truly hopeless.
And then she kind of grabs onto this giant banner that's on the face of the building, and still it's like, well, that's not going to help. But then this is the shot that I'm talking about. The wind catches this giant banner and she kind of floats up, and in between you see her point of view. She's looking out onto the city, and in between the buildings you see this gorgeous sunset and her just kind of floating in midair with this baby. And I just like burst into tears because I was holding all this tension. It's like, oh my gosh. And then she floats down with the baby and it's fine. And I mean, that if that's not a Christmas miracle, I don't know what is.
Right. Yeah. No, it's crazy.
I was just remembering, I don't remember if this is after or before it. I think it's before. No, it's right before the roof sequence. The baby napper has the baby in her arms, and the baby is very upset because, you know, not her mother, and has been through all this trauma and all that. She's crying. But there's such a like maximalism to this film because it's not just the baby crying. Then it becomes like every baby in Tokyo is crying. We get these shots of just like babies around the city, crying out.
And they check each one, which is so good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And because our trio, our heroes are looking for the crying baby, and they do. They check each one. I had no further point. I realized like, oh yeah, it's the maximalist kind of style of this. That is just, everything is so kind of exaggerated and almost unbelievable, but again, believable because it's Christmas time.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting thematic content for Cohn to explore. Because, coming off his second film, I mean, you were saying, you know, I wonder if he's going to be exploring this for his full filmography or what it's going to look like. And his first two films are kind of sister films exploring memory and reality and what it means to live and claim your life and all that. And there definitely is a bit of, you know, how to live in this movie, but it's much more grounded. It's much more... like the narrative structure is relatively simple. We just kind of go from the start to the end with occasional backstory, but there's never a question of like, oh, is this scene happening? Except maybe when the baby speaks perfect English, but or well, Japanese.
Yeah.
We have it subtitled. Anyway,
did you watch the dub?
No, I didn't, but I just from reading, what is reality? Anyway, but. Yeah, I wanted to ask you what you thought about what themes did or didn't carry over and why you think this was such a departure or if it is, because I've kind of heard all kinds of things from people.
I mean, I think the theme of, you know, taking control of your own life is definitely present here. And knowing that like it's never too late to change and to change course from what you're currently doing and you define your identity. You know, I think Hana is a great example of that. Like a trans woman is choosing the identity that she feels that she is in her heart. And, you know, I think for Jin, it's him realizing like, oh, my daughter does want to have a relationship with me and I can find a place in my family again, even if it's not going to be the same. It's Miyuki reconciling with her father at the end, who is the police officer on the case for the stolen baby, talking about another coincidence, realizing like, oh, you know, it's fine. I can make a mistake and keep going on. And I think, you know, in a way, reality, like what is reality is also kind of explored or is definitely, it's there, because as we're talking about, there are a lot of things that feel like this shouldn't be possible or this feels like too big of a coincidence, and they happen just the same within it. So, you know, I think what we get a lot more here is the exploration of family, what it means to be a part of a family, what it means to find your own and define your own family. I think in Perfect Blue and in Millennium Actress, it's a lot more focused on just like individual identity. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, yeah, that's great. I loved listening to all of that because I guess you're right that there is still, maybe it's reality questioning in a different way. In this case, is there more than we're seeing instead of, is what we're seeing true?
Is there a higher power?
But yeah, you're right that it is still here. Is there a higher power? Yeah. But I think for me, because again, this is the last thing I've seen by Cohn. And when we proposed going through his films on the podcast, I remembered there being like such an empathy to his work. And it definitely is there in the first two, but it's so much more in this one. But I think this helps to recolor his first two films and to make his oeuvre more about, like having compassion for the marginalized in whatever way, whether that's someone struggling, in a much more extreme way with Perfect Blue or more realistic ways here. And even, when you look at Millennium Actress, like this is an old person that like never really found what she was looking for, and like that's sad in its way. So it's in a variety of ways looking at people that we might not normally think about and like creating art that lets us feel for them and understand them better. So I think that's what this does for me, is it deepens his other films. It makes it retroactively just a filmography about empathy. And and I'm curious to see, going forward into films I haven't seen. Well, I guess a show and a film I haven't seen, what it looks like going forward and how I'll feel about everything.
Me too. I have no idea what we're in store for next. No reference points for me either. And I hope my hope is that we continue down this same kind of highly empathetic exploration of, what it means to be human, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if I've seen a film that does a better job of centering homeless people in a human way, in a way that doesn't make them defined just by their homelessness, while also acknowledging their reality. I think he does a beautiful job. We talked a lot about what Cohn does right and maybe not as right with the character of Hana as a trans woman, but especially for the time, I think there's just such empathy and such a beautiful depiction of what it means to be homeless, and that homeless people are people just the same and are not just failures of society as so many people view them to be. So very, very impressed with that.
Small moment here. But while talking about the empathy of the film, I think it's a key choice that the mother that does help them earlier in the film when they need it is an immigrant. Japan, very different struggle than we're having right now. But historically, Japan is mostly all Japanese people. And so someone that looks different in that way stands out and isn't, looked down upon necessarily, but it's just looked at as different is to the best of my understanding and reading how it kind of works.
I'm glad you brought up.
I thought it was a key choice,
the mother
in this film that I think is so about empathy, that person is also looked at as an equal and helpful to our characters.
Yeah. On that subject of the mother, I also love, at least in the version that I watched, they don't subtitle the Spanish, which I assume means they don't subtitle it for Japanese speakers either. And yet we get so much from her. She only speaks Spanish, and Miyuki, who is the main person who interacts with her, only speaks Japanese. And yet we see this beautiful conversation happen and these little moments of recognition when each of them, recognizes a word or a phrase that the other has said. And just again, very empathetic, beautiful depiction of immigrants and of diversity too. So highly impressed. At the end, we get they're in the hospital, the baby is being returned, and our three heroes are being treated for their various injuries as a result of what has transpired. And the parents are there, and they're are like, oh, we really want to meet the people who saved our baby. And Miyuki's dad is like, well, it's like a couple of homeless people. Are you sure? And they're like, yeah, we don't care. Like they're we don't care if they're homeless or not. We want to meet them. And so they go into the hospital room and they ask Jin and Hana to be the Godfathers, which is where we get our title, the Godfathers of this child. And it's beautiful.
It's such a good title drop. And I mean, it wasn't, I guess, not a title drop in the traditional, like they didn't say Tokyo Godfathers, but just giving meaning to the title in a way that was so specific, I thought was great. Especially, I mean, you and I talked about Perfect Blue on here, where it's like, okay, well, it has a name. So I definitely appreciated that there was such intentionality on that. Based on all of the positivity of the conversation, I'm pretty sure I have the answer, but would you recommend the film?
Any time of the year, especially Christmas, but any time of the year. Yes, absolutely. For all the reasons that we just said. I mean, I think there's beautiful, empathetic depictions of a lot of different types of people. I think that it's very serious subject matter that is cut with some moments of comedy. I was kind of prepared to not like this one as much for whatever reason. I think it's maybe a little lower rated than some of the others, and it provoked the biggest emotional response in me so far in this series on Satoshi Kon for the rooftop sequence alone. My goodness.
Yeah, I think it's
Would
great.
you recommend
I
the film?
think it probably is best viewed at Christmas, but we're recommending this January 21st when you're hearing this, and yeah, today's a great day. I think for all the reasons we talked about, for the great pacing of the film, which I guess we didn't talk as much on the technical side, but this is another 90-minute one. All of his films have been short, but yeah, I think this one probably feels, I mean, it's hard to compare the pacing of this to Perfect Blue because they're such different beasts, but I think this is the most intentionally paced, I guess we'll say. And yeah, I think that just the characters are fascinating, the interactions are great, and the climax is, I mean, I knew it was coming this time and still was just absolutely awestruck. So if you agree or disagree with anything we've said here, or if you just want to talk, or if you want to say that we're a film podcast and we can't watch a show and we need to stop before we do that next week, whatever you want, go ahead and write to us, retrospectivecinemapodcast@gmail.com, or you can comment on Spotify, or you can find us on Instagram or TikTok at retro_sin, CIN. I actually, we've had an ongoing joke off pod where Annie's videos do well and mine go triple cardboard. Just the opposite of triple platinum, but that changed this week. I had a big hit. Yeah, I had a big hit.
You now have the top video, or
well, sure,
it's not even a video, and I rightfully so. Yeah, Ryan made a post on our TikTok most recently about expanding on his Japanese cinema starter pack that he talked about in our previous episode on Millennium Actress, and it's awesome. If you haven't seen it, if you're one of the unlucky people who haven't seen it yet, go check it out because it's comprehensive.
I am
great.
also on Letterboxd at Ryan Loves Film,
and I am on Letterboxd at Annie Morell. Next week, as previously referenced, we dive into TV. We take a step back from the silver screen, and we go into our watch of Paranoia Agent, which we are breaking up into 2 parts. Next week, we will be watching and discussing episodes 1 through 7. And then the following week, we'll finish up Paranoia Agent with episodes 8 through 13. So if you are watching along, get to watching 1 through 7 of Paranoia Agent. I'm very excited for this one. No idea what it's about. It's got some cool posters. That's all I know.
I'm very curious to dive into it because it's Satoshi Kon's show, so it's kind of always been like, I should get to that eventually, but I never did. So today's the day. As you check out Paranoia Agent or get back into the Christmas season with Tokyo Godfathers, or as you check out Sam Raimi's first R-rated film in 20 years or something. I think it's coming out right when you hear this episode. What?
What?
Oh yeah,
I don't know anything about this.
In a second. Anyway, happy watching. You could.
Happy watching.
I was gonna say, yeah, you can
Merry
say "Merry
watching."
watching" one last time.